This is episode 59 of Off Script with Trish Glose. Intimate interviews and fun conversations with interesting people. In front of my microphone today is Samantha Steele. Hello, Samantha.
Good morning.
Good morning. You are the superintendent for Central Point School District.
Yes, I am.
Is the school year wrapped up?
The school year is wrapped up for students and
Okay.
for teachers, but we still have a tremendous number of staff working on wrapping up this year and getting started on next year.
I was going to ask, I think there's a romantic idea of teachers and school administrators that once that last bell rings, you guys fly out the door too.
I think once that last bell rings, teachers and principals do fly out at the door for the evening.
For the weekend?
For the weekend. There's something about that transition. It's hard not to get excited about summer. Most of us have been in school since we were 5 years old. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter that a large number of us, for example, I work year round, 260 days a year. Mm-hmm. I really don't have summer break. But you still feel that
the pressure's
excitement.
off.
The pressure's a little bit off. Yeah.
I've never really thought about teachers and school staff and administrators. You guys have been going to school like your whole lives.
Oh, yes. Yes, we're good at school.
Yeah, you are. You're professional schoolgoers, I guess. Do you think if you ever took, I don't want to say not real job, that's awful. If you ever took a job that it wasn't a school year, I mean, would you be able, you said you work year round.
I work year round. And in fact, a lot of times, one of the good times of year for me to take a vacation is September. And that sounds crazy.
That does sound crazy.
Everybody's back in school. But I'm district office. I'm at the Death Star.
Yeah.
No one in any school, no principal, no teacher, no one wants to see me in September. And,
oh gosh, that's hilarious.
So a lot of times as they're trying to get started, the last thing they want is someone from district office coming in.
Have you known teachers who get out of teaching and they do something else and they're just like, I can't do this schedule. Has that ever happened?
Oh, absolutely.
I can imagine.
We've had teachers resign, go to pursue something else and come back. The summer's off and there are a lot of our staff who absolutely have summers off. And that is a nice perk.
That's a bonus.
It really is.
And those winter breaks, those aren't bad either.
Not bad. And a week at spring break.
It's on my list of what would I do if I ever left News 10. Maybe do something with a school district. I could be a teacher's aide.
Well, come in and teach a class.
Okay.
Do a seminar. Come into CraterWorks and do something. We have right now elementary kids at Central Point Elementary doing podcasts. We have high school kids. They have a little podcast studio. It is fabulous. Yeah.
I think there was a group, I want to say from the school, Central Point School District, who came in and did a tour and interviewed us. Was that Central Point?
I think those were Central Point Elementary students.
Tough questions.
Oh, yes.
And she shook my hand afterwards and said, "Thank you. Nice to meet you. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me."
Good.
I was like, man, gunning for my job is what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to talk a lot about school and the school district and CraterWorks especially because this is your new baby.
Awesome. It is my new baby.
Yay. First of all, I like to start off all my fun conversations with, where are you from originally?
I'm from northeastern Oregon. One thing I learned when I moved to Southern Oregon is when I say I'm from Eastern Oregon, people say, "Oh, Bend? I love Bend."
That's central.
Bend is in the middle of the state. I'm from kind of the far reaches of the state. It's a 9-hour drive from here.
Whoa.
I grew up in Haines, population 350. It's located kind of between LeGrand, Oregon, and Baker.
Okay.
Baker City now. It was Baker when I grew up there.
That gives you an idea of how big this state is.
It is. It is.
Huge.
I moved as far as I possibly could from home without leaving the state.
What's the landscape like over in Eastern Oregon? It's more like sagebrushy, right?
Well, some of it is. I think people again think Eastern Oregon is going to be high desert, and there's some of that on the eastern side of the state. I grew up in the Baker Valley. On one side, the Blue Mountains, stunning. I mean, they are massive. Beautiful mountain range, and on the other side, the Wallowas or the Elkhorn Range. Okay. A much larger valley, I think, than the Rogue Valley, but really stunningly beautiful. It's green all summer. Again, some sagebrush hills for sure, but
Right.
mostly mountains.
So small town girl.
Oh, very much. Grew up on a ranch.
You grew up on a ranch.
I
like
did.
Cows, horses.
Cattle.
Cattle.
And horses.
Okay.
But cattle primarily and hay.
You kind of have to have horses if you have cattle, right?
I think so. Maybe not. I was back at the ranch a few weeks ago and heading into town, into Baker, and had to slow down. They were moving cattle, and they were doing it with four-wheelers. That wasn't the way it was when I grew up.
Horses,
so
right?
maybe horses aren't as important anymore if you're running cattle.
Interesting. So these were cattle that like went to slaughter for beef, or
Probably. Well, you mean the cattle that we raised?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. We raised beef cattle.
Okay.
When we moved cattle, as this was happening, it's typically moving from pasture to pasture, from
okay.
the sagebrush areas in the winter into the pasture areas in the
Hard
summer.
work.
Very hard work.
Okay. So this was your your family ranch? Like, is this something that your dad got into, or his dad, or?
Absolutely. It's a family ranch. It's important in Oregon to say that I am a native Oregonian. I was born in Oregon, but just barely. It's when you speak with people who say, oh, my parents were foreign born, but I was born in America. Here in Oregon, it's important to say that I'm a native Oregonian because my parents are Californians.
Oh, shh. We won't say that too loud. So they came up. Oh, there's so many California transplants. I mean,
I know.
They love it up here. But they came from California and just settled.
They did.
Somewhere?
They moved to from Northern California to Eastern Oregon in 1965. I was born in 1966, so they were here a very short period of time before. They managed to make it across the border, so
Gotcha.
I could be born in Oregon.
Cute. Did you help out on the ranch growing up?
Oh, absolutely.
You kind of have to, right?
You do, yes.
It's all hands on deck. Or
It
something
is
like
all
that.
hands on deck.
Did you grow up with siblings?
I have two sisters,
Okay.
two younger sisters, one who's a year younger and one who's 8 years younger.
Okay. Oh, that's kind of quite the gap.
It is, yes. I can tell you that I was the only planned child. I don't think anyone intends to have their second child a year later. And no one intends on that baby 8 years later. But I
Right.
do hold that over my sisters.
Right. Nice. Did you guys get along?
We did.
Yeah.
We did. I mean, we had the things that siblings
Of course.
have. But
course.
yeah, we did get along.
Awesome. So you go to high school in Baker, or?
Went to high school in Baker.
Okay.
I went there. I went to high school for 3 years. I left after my third year. Technically, I'm a high school dropout.
Really?
I guess technically, in reality, I'm a high school dropout. Growing up in northeastern Oregon, in a small town, I think part of it was kind of feeling limited in some degree, not because I was a massive talent or had all of these things I wanted to do, but by the end of my junior year in high school, I had already taken chemistry and physics and AP English. I was facing a year of probably some PE and electives, and I was kind of over it.
You were done.
I was done, and I did something that I think my mom, who is 75 years old now, still probably is very regretful about. I just said, I don't want to go anymore. I want to go do something else. At that time, the state of Oregon required that you spend, there were seat time hours to get a diploma. So I hadn't achieved those seat time hours. I applied for colleges in Oregon. Very disappointing to my mom. She's went to Berkeley. My dad went to Davis. I think they had ideas. You always want your children to do better. That I would be at, I don't know, Stanford or Yale or Harvard. I had good SAT scores. I had strong grades. So it was pretty devastating when I said I'm out.
Yeah, a smarty pants. Super smart, sounds like.
Super smart.
Sounds like you got bored.
I did get bored.
Yeah.
And no, again, I don't want to imply that I was a genius or super talented.
I don't get that at all. I mean, I'm not saying
my boredom was kind of in a really kind of regular way. I think I was tired of ranch chores. I was tired of the whole scene and wanted to do something else. So I applied for various colleges in Oregon. The only ones that would accept me without a high school diploma were Southern Oregon State College, Western Oregon State College, or Eastern Oregon State College. And I did what any precocious 16-year-old would do.
gosh.
Choose the one that's the farthest away.
Yep, go as far as you can.
Right.
So that was
right.
Southern Oregon.
Southern Oregon.
Wow. 16?
Yeah, I think I maybe just turned 17 after my last year of high school.
You're leaving home at 17. You don't have a high school diploma?
I did not.
Okay, what are your parents saying at this point?
Oh, I think my mom was upset, wasn't sure, what to say except,
Sure.
Okay, go on.
Yeah.
Go on to school. I was definitely academically prepared for college. I felt like I could handle the coursework, and I did pretty easily. I think in a lot of ways I was not mature enough to be in college at 16 or 17. So
I've had a few guests on this podcast who have done just that. They went into college at 17 years old, and a lot of them were like, yeah, it was great, I finished early, but I wouldn't do it again because you're not ready emotionally.
I absolutely
for that.
wouldn't do it again. I had my son when I was 19 years old. I mean, there are a lot of things that happened as a result of college that I think had I been more mature, I would have fared better, I think. And I had a great college experience at Southern Oregon, but I certainly could have gone to, better college, I think,
Yeah.
had I actually not been in such a hurry to get out.
Right. And yeah, I mean, you look back at that stuff and it's always that shoulda, woulda, coulda.
And things turned out the way I think in the best possible way.
Right.
I was an English major. I have a degree in English. Then because I was pregnant, I had to think about, all right, maybe law school isn't the best plan. I've got to raise a child. Maybe waiting until I write the great American novel is not the best plan with a baby on the way. So I got a second bachelor's degree in education, and my plan was that I would substitute teach until I could put together the money for law school or publish the great American novel.
Is that what you wanted to do? Did you want to be a lawyer?
I did. I love. That's why I was an English major. I love problem solving, reading, writing. That was the plan.
Wow. And then the baby comes along and does not necessarily do those plans, are they on hold or are you like they're done?
Well, I think they were on hold initially because it wasn't that I had a terrible high school experience, but for someone to leave high school after 3 years, not feel particularly fulfilled by it, to then decide, oh, maybe I'll teach high school. So it was really intended to be a way to provide that to be able to sustain myself and my son. And as we mentioned earlier, that academic school schedule, I'm thinking, oh, well, this is perfect if you're raising a child.
It really is.
It is. And what I didn't expect was that I would love it. From this time I started student teaching high school English, I loved it. It was my jam.
Were you 19? At the time, or were you like 20 at this point?
I would have been 20 because
Okay.
I think I turned 21 the year that I graduated. I did 2 4-year degrees over 5 years and had a son. I accomplished a lot.
Oh my
years.
gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. What were
Yeah.
your 2 degrees? English?
One in English, one in education.
In education.
Right. Then I went back, the following year, I think after my first year teaching, and got a master's degree within a couple of years. And then from there got further education certification at Portland State.
Because it's what you do.
It's what,
You
I'm a school
teachers,
person.
you superintendents, you
That's
you
right.
can't get enough of school. You love it so
right.
much.
That's
Did you
right.
ever play school when you were younger?
No.
Oh, I did. I was
Did you?
I played school. I was the teacher, and I had some weird. One of my teachers gave me. Do you remember the attendance books?
Oh, absolutely.
It was like very grid. It was like a
A
grid.
grid. Mm-hmm.
And she gave me one of her old ones, and I was in high heaven, and I played school when I
You were
was
very
little.
bossy when you were little, weren't you?
Very
because
bossy.
you were the teacher, I assume.
Very bossy. How'd you know that?
I can just tell.
I'm
If you
still
If
bossy.
you're playing school, you want to be the teacher.
I'm still really bossy. In fact, I have a great story. I came home from school once, maybe first grade, second grade, crying in tears. And I said, Mom, nobody wants to play with me. I don't have any friends. No one wants to play with me. And she goes, "That's because you're too bossy." And I was like, oh, okay. I boss people around. I still do. I still boss people around. My husband says that all the time. He's like, don't boss me around. You're not my boss. But yeah, I was very bossy. So I wanted to be the teacher and I wanted to tell everybody their thing.
That's funny.
So you are student teaching in a local high school?
Local high school at Ashland High School.
Wow. And you love it.
Loved it. I loved it.
What did you love about it?
I think that on one level, well, first of all, it was literature and writing. Those are two things that I really loved. I didn't expect to really like working with students as much as I did. And I think from the first time I was teaching that student teaching experience, I felt like this is an opportunity to do better by these students, to make sure that their experience isn't what mine. And again, my high school experience was not terrible by any means.
Right.
But I wanted to make sure that kids really were challenged and engaged.
It's that kind of that idea of leaving something better than when you stumbled across it.
And I'm not sure that had you asked me at the time, was that part of what was driving me? I'm sure that I would not have recognized that. But in retrospect, I certainly recognize that.
Just making it something that's different for students.
Absolutely.
More engaging or...
More engaging and challenging, I think, are the two things that I was after.
So you do a lot in 5 years, 2 degrees and a kiddo. And is your goal at this point, I want to be a teacher. That's what I want to do.
Oh, absolutely. By the time I finished student teaching, I was ready. Wanted to be a teacher.
Okay, so where does that path take you then?
I had 2 job offers. One was in Lake Oswego. One was at Eagle Point. It was 1989, and there just wasn't a lot of hiring going on. I was fortunate. I'd done very well in student teaching. So I had some choices in jobs. Decided I really loved the Rogue Valley. I'd never even been really to Eagle Point though, but took the job and had a great few years in teaching.
Okay.
In fact, when I say a lot, a handful of my former students now work for us in District 6.
Oh my gosh, is that crazy?
It is crazy. It is crazy.
It's I had great experiences with teachers growing up in elementary school and middle school, just those ones that really stick out to you.
Yeah,
that you never forget. My first grade teacher was Mrs. Musselwhite, and I just adored her. Anyways, it was weird when you saw your teachers out at the grocery store, like you're with your mom, and you're just like, ew, there's my teacher and she's wearing shorts. And it was just like so weird and creepy. And I'm sure there's probably this very surreal thing for you when you had these like kiddos that are now like, they're adults, they're married, they're having children.
Right.
It's nuts.
Right. It is crazy.
Because I think we feel like we're sort of the same age.
I do. It's shocking to me when I'll see someone that had been a student at graduation. We're lined up for graduation. This guy says, "Oh, Miss Steele," and waves to me. And it was Danny Acree, a kid that I had. He said, "I haven't seen you for 20 years." I wanted to say, "Danny, it's more like 25."
Oh my gosh! Yeah. It's just like it's so cliche, but where does the time go? It just slips by us.
It does.
Really fast. So you're working in the Eagle Point School District at the high school?
At the high school.
Okay, teaching English and writing?
Well, English, yes, but which is literature and writing.
Okay, so literature, which brings me to what were in your curriculum, what were the books that your students were reading during this time?
Oh my gosh, when I think of the books that were impactful, Catcher in the Rye was a big one. Anything, I love to present books in a way like, well, this is a banned book. Gosh, I'm not sure we should do this. All you have to do is present it in that way for kids.
This is off limits.
I'm worried about this. There were some Shakespeare that I presented that way that kids ended up really liking as a result.
Like what from Shakespeare?
Oh my gosh. What was one that ninth graders got Romeo and Juliet?
One of my favorites.
Caesar. I'm trying to think of all of the Shakespeare that we went through, but students ended up really liking that once they understood some of the humor and
the controversy.
Macbeth, all of the sexual overtones of Macbeth, that kind of thing.
It is interesting to think about this old dude being so scandalous and that
Yes, yeah.
it was big when he was alive in this
Right.
time frame, and it's still, relevant for us.
Right. So now I live in Ashland. People dress up. They go to the theater. It's considered a sophisticated thing. I think in Shakespeare's day, everyone was the equivalent of drinking Budweiser and
Right.
getting in fights in
Right.
the audience
Right.
to see this kind of
Which is still fun,
humor.
still a
It's
good party.
Still a good party.
Yeah, Catcher in the Rye was a big one, I think,
was
in
a
high
big
school.
one, yeah.
Great Gatsby.
Great Gatsby taught that.
That's one of the reasons why I started going into writing classes, was just The Great Gatsby. And it was all because of the way the teacher broke it down. I think if you send a kid home with this book and say, come back in a week and we're going to write a paper on it,
Yeah.
you have to break it down, that whole the West Egg, East Egg, portion.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, what does this mean? Old money, new money. And you have to break down all of the little elements in the book. Otherwise, students, they're not going to get it. You have
Right.
to challenge them and help them understand where the author's
Absolutely.
coming from.
Absolutely.
Kill a Mockingbird.
The To Kill a Mockingbird's a great one.
It's
Yeah.
it's awesome
It's not
too.
just the history, but it's also what does this mean for kids today?
Yes.
That's and not just in a historical significance or this is part of the literary canon,
Right.
But what does it mean for kids?
And I
today?
love that. I think it's so awesome that, the books that we were reading 2 decades ago, students are still reading today, among others, but they're timeless.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. Oh, that's
Absolutely.
so exciting. Let's
Yeah.
do an English class.
Let's do one. Come in and guest teach.
That would be
It'd
super fun. So, with teaching, a lot of jobs, it's all about promotions and moving up the ladder. Was that important for you?
No, gosh, it's kind of funny that as we're having this conversation, I'm realizing that a lot of elements of my professional life have not been, there was no real forethinking about or planning or aspiring. So I was an English teacher for quite a few years. I became an assistant principal at Eagle Point High School because there had been some changes at the district office. I was hired without a license to be an administrator 3 or 4 weeks, I think, into the school year on an emergency license. Just some changes, and someone somewhere thought, oh, you would be really good at this, and I became an assistant principal. And
On the administration side.
on the administration side, the dark side, not quite as dark as the Death Star that is district office.
Oh yeah, you're dark.
Oh, yeah.
When you're in the superintendent's office, that's it.
Darth Vader.
Totally Darth Vader. I didn't want to go there, but you said it first. Are you still teaching in assistant principal or no? Just assistant principal.
Just assistant principal, and I did that for a couple of years at Eagle Point. Then ended up moving to Crater. At that point, I did like being an assistant principal.
Okay, I was
it
gonna
was
ask.
it was a lot of fun. Missed a little bit of teaching, but it was fun. And then I accepted a job at Crater High School. I moved from Central Point or Eagle Point to Central Point, point to point. And that principal, Karen Lynch, who was awesome, and she was nearing retirement. And what I really thought was, this is a good move, because eventually I want to be a high school principal.
You do.
So I could work under her and then become a principal.
Okay.
That's what I get for thinking ahead and doing some career planning, because that is, of course, not what happened.
Okay, what happened?
After, I think, 2 years at Crater, I talked to the superintendent, or he had talked to me about applying for a job as director of education. I really hesitated to apply for that job or to consider that, because I saw the move as being principal, not district office. But after thinking about it and looking at what those responsibilities were, it looked interesting to me. So long story short, I end up as director of education.
Okay. Do you have to go back to school for anything, for any of this?
No, I think by then I'd finished everything I needed to do
Okay.
school-wise.
So now you're in the district office. You really are on the dark side, as you say.
Yeah.
Is there, I mean, I know you're joking about it. Is there a divide between teachers and like the administrative staff?
Well, I mean, I think there's naturally that kind of tension. I hope, and I believe this is true in our district, that we have a very collaborative relationship with our teachers. Part of what I loved about being a high school teacher is getting to decide what to teach and how to teach it. And even as we look at the shift in education in the U.S. and the shift toward testing and required curriculum, those kinds of things, I really believe, and in our district, teachers get to choose. They have tremendous academic freedom.
That's nice.
They get to try some things. Otherwise, I can't imagine coming to work every day and having Houghton Mifflin, the textbook publisher, determine what you're going to do.
For sure.
So I think in our case, there are naturally always those tensions, but teachers do have that academic freedom, and I think it has meant better relationships between administration and teachers.
So I want to talk about then, you're now in the district office and the path that you take to get to superintendent. But before that, really quickly, what has changed in our education system?
Oh my gosh. Well,
Has it gotten worse?
Has it gotten worse? I think in a lot of ways it's gotten better.
Okay,
but
good.
it got worse first.
Okay.
So No Child Left Behind was the first thing that happened. And No Child Left Behind forced public schools to focus on testing. It came into play right about the time that funding was really low. So suddenly you don't have much money and our feet are to the fire on passing these particular high stakes tests.
Yeah.
Everything else in the curriculum went away because it was all about the test. The only positive from No Child Left Behind is it truly forced schools to focus on the progress of every student.
Okay.
So I appreciate that. I think that was the legacy No Child Left Behind left us.
What year was that? Do you remember?
Oh my gosh.
I want to say it was like 2000, early 2000s. No?
I think it was early 2000s.
I can, if I had my phone in here, I would
We
look
could
it up.
Google it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But
And since then, I mean, I think we are still in a place of high stakes testing. No one is really sure what is the quick and dirty, how do we know if kids are learning?
yeah.
And so we depend on these tests. Tests tell us something, but it's like going to the doctor and saying the only piece of data that we're going to use is your blood pressure.
yeah.
And if your blood pressure's high, you're not healthy. And if it's low, you are healthy. And that's it. That's the only data we're going to use. And certainly that wouldn't be accurate or appropriate in the world of medicine. I don't know why it continues to be considered accurate or appropriate in the world of schools.
Do you think we should be testing students like this, have these standardized tests?
Well, I think there is always a place for standardized tests, but
Okay.
it needs to be part of a wide range of ways that we assess kids. In our district, we've really focused on exhibition. So not only are kids doing a paper and pencil test, which doesn't replicate anything that anyone ever does in the real world beyond more school, but we ask students to show us what they know and they're able to do. We had 6-year-olds get together for exhibition and build an elevator out of a pulley system for their parents. That was their project. The focus was simple machines. They decided they wanted to build an elevator, and on exhibition night, they lifted their parents up in this pulley system elevator. That same group, as 7-year-olds and second graders this year, built a roller coaster that you could ride.
That you can ride. That's impressive.
It is.
They're learning something.
Not only are they learning something, those content standards in science and math, they're learning collaboration and problem solving. They're learning how do you work together and you come to this challenge and you're not sure what to do and pushing past that. So I think those are other ways that we demonstrate that students are learning.
Yeah. Because I think I have seen, just in stories that I've done and through personal experience, pushing students through that shouldn't be pushed through just to get them onto the next grade.
Well, I think sometimes students, and a lot of times those students who are good at school become teachers, they get good at doing school. If you can pass a class or get an A because you've turned in 100% of your assignments, if you can get extra credit for bringing in cans for the canned food drive, then those grades are really not reflecting what you know and you're able to do. Being good at school is not necessarily, those aren't skills that translate to being good in the real world, as you mentioned.
So there's a lot of things that's done right currently within the public school education. So. What do we still need to work on?
We need to work on customer service. I think we were the only game in town for decades. So if someone
Who's
moved
we?
in-
Central Point?
No, public schools.
Public school, okay.
We're the only game in town. You move into a neighborhood, you find out where your school is, you sign up for school. There is no teacher, principal, front office secretary that says, gosh, I wish we had more students here. It was the only game in town, and I think it's not the only game in town for good reason. There are charter schools, there are private schools, there are online schools. We need to serve our customers, those students, those families, much, much better than we have been in the past.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Logos Charter School building a brand new facility.
Absolutely.
It's become increasingly popular over the last few years.
Absolutely, because part of that is because we expect that in every area of our life, we expect that things are going to be personalized and individualized for us. No one picks up the phone and says, I'm just going to order a pepperoni pizza. They go to Mod Pizza and choose exactly which ingredients
Just
they
for
want
me.
on my personal pizza.
Yeah.
Charters and private schools have gotten better at that. We need to do that because kids really do learn better when education is personalized.
Very interesting. And I think you're seeing that now with CraterWorks,
Oh, absolutely.
so which we will talk about. So you're the director of education. What year is this?
Oh my gosh, you ask a lot of tough questions. Maybe 2000.
Did you hear that? I ask a lot of tough questions. Yes, I like it.
2005, 2000. I don't know.
Okay.
Right around there.
Okay.
No, maybe it was later than that. 2006, 2007.
Okay. I told you this before we started. I ran into one of my future podcast interview people, and she said, I listened to some of your podcasts. You're going to ask me all sorts of questions about me. I don't know if I'm ready for this. And I was like, yeah, you got to spill your guts. That's what you do on off script.
I'm good with the narratives, but when you ask me about a particular date or time, I will mix that up.
Okay.
So,
well, my apologies. I'm just nosy.
right.
I'm
Right.
just-
I got that.
I am obnoxiously curious, actually, which is a better way of saying it. So you're director of education. Do you have your eyes on superintendent? Or are you just sort of happy in this moment?
Oh my gosh, director of education was super fun. It was a great job. I really got to help design, figure out, think about what was next for schools. Crater went through the transition to small schools at that time.
Oh, okay.
We had a lot happening in the district. When the Randy Gravon, who was incredible, I mean, someone who really allowed people to pursue their passions, to try things, when he got ready for retirement, that was one of the few times in my career where I absolutely wanted to be the superintendent, and for all the wrong reasons.
Oh, what were the reasons?
Well, what I imagined the job, I imagined that I would be like the director of education, but with $60 million to spend on that I would get to take all of the elements of my existing job with me and simply have more resource. I worked very closely with Randy the last few years that he was superintendent. You would think that I would have really had an idea of what a superintendent does, and I truly didn't.
Oh, no.
I truly didn't.
But you get the job.
I got the job.
After a while, were you like, oh, crap?
I think a little bit was disappointing. It's hard to give up the stuff that I loved. I mean, I had a director of education, and he was really talented, and he wanted to do that job, and didn't really want me meddling. Although I think if you ever interview
Are you a
him,
control freak?
Not a control freak. I'm a little more of a meddler.
Okay.
I find things I'm interested in, and then I want to do those things.
Yeah.
So I had to let that go. I had to take on, superintendent is very political. Superintendent sometimes is a lot more about the relationship of the district with other entities than it really is the operations of the district. I mean, there's someone running operations, there's someone running business, there's someone running education. The superintendent is that person who is the relationship with outside groups.
I mean, it's very political. Was that a shock for you? Like,
Yes.
I mean, because people are all up in your business.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, how did you handle that?
Well, I think it's tough at first. We just successfully passed a bond, which was incredible to be able to have our community support us in that way. I had never been through a bond campaign. As we're getting ready for it, there's kind of a fine line between what you do as a private citizen and then what you do in your role.
Exactly.
I have to be very apolitical in my role. Teachers could go door to door and knock on doors and say, please vote yes for our bond.
You can't.
I can't, because I am never not the superintendent.
Right.
So a teacher can do that after 4 p.m.
Yeah.
In July, I can't.
And you obviously are supporting this bond.
Absolutely.
But you can't say anything about it.
Right. I mean, I could say what we would do if we had the money.
Sure.
There were a lot of factual things I could say, but I could never say vote yes on our bond.
Was it heartbreaking to hear in the news and read in articles? I'm sure people are like, I'm absolutely voting no against this. The school district needs to figure out their budget without us spending more money.
I don't think it was heartbreaking. Honestly, when folks engaged either online or sent me an email or I talked to them about their reasons for voting no, I understand. I think the tax system in Oregon is flawed and we need a major overhaul. We ask a lot of taxpayers and particularly property owners. Unfortunately, in the state of Oregon, school funding is complicated. There's no, in a nutshell, way to explain it. But districts receive funds from the state school fund for operations.
Yeah.
School districts have to go out for capital improvement bonds in order to do capital projects.
It's a bake sale.
It's a bake sale.
It's a glorified bake sale.
$82 million bake sale.
I know. It's backwards to me.
It is backwards.
The Oregon legislature just passed this education bill.
Yes.
Are you excited about this? Is this
very,
a good thing?
Very excited. I'm just wrapping up the last few weeks of being president of the Confederation of Oregon School Administrators. That's the organization that worked along with the Oregon School Boards Association and the Oregon Education Association to work toward that legislation.
Awesome.
So it's been a busy year in that way, getting to this place where I think we will fundamentally change education in Oregon.
Awesome. That's exciting.
It's exciting.
Let's put more on your plate, Samantha Steele.
Let's do it.
So you're superintendent. You're getting comfy in this role of superintendent. Where does the idea of CraterWorks come?
So the idea of CraterWorks is a combination of a lot of things that happened simultaneously.
Okay.
We had just started working. I know you interviewed Tania Browning with Dirt. She and I got together following a Rotary meeting. She had done a presentation about finding community garden space. She was actually looking for something to buy. I approached her afterwards and said, "Don't buy anything. Let's have lunch."
She's awesome, by the way.
She's incredible. She's incredible.
She's hilarious.
So I said, "Don't buy anything. Let's have lunch."
Okay.
We talked. I said, we've got 10 school campuses that we could do gardens. What if you did them at school sites? Long story short, she did. Dirt has been an incredible partnership where teachers have the opportunity to go out and use gardens, use the aquaponics system when it makes sense in their curriculum, but they're not weeding those gardens on Sundays. They're not having to repair the greenhouse. So it makes project-based learning or authentic learning easy. CraterWorks happened as a result of partially that relationship, but really what it was is, oh my gosh, so many things happened.
I heard about a trip to Portland.
So there was a trip to Portland. I had been running in Portland a lot on weekends, and I kept running by this place that I couldn't figure out, what is this? People marching in with 2x4s. It looked like art. I couldn't figure out what it was.
Wait, you're like running?
Running.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm
like
runner.
exercise.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
So one day I just went in
Okay.
and decided I'm going to check this out. And it was a makerspace. I'd never heard of a makerspace.
Right.
Meanwhile, we had an offer from the Morris Family Foundation. They're incredible. They said, we want to do something for Central Point School District. Think big.
Ooh.
I know. They had no idea when they've been incredible. I don't think they were thinking, like $300,000, not $4.5 million, but
Okay.
they were great. So that had happened. I had this relationship with Tania, seen the makerspace. with the Morris offer. Meanwhile, career technical education, CTE, was
Yes.
having a resurgence. And there had been a lot of pressure on school districts to bring back CTE. And I knew I didn't want to bring back CTE the way it was in the past. People have nostalgia about it. Wasn't it great when you could take woodshop? Absolutely. But things had changed. When I started teaching, even when I was in high school, some kids took woodshop and metal shop and went into the workplace after high school. Some kids took AP Physics and AP English and went to university. Those things have changed. That pathway idea has changed for a number of reasons. One, it takes more credits to graduate from high school in Oregon, so kids don't have those electives.
Yeah.
The time over 4 years as available to them. Kids who are going into a vocation need more math, more science, and more technology than they did 20 or 30 or 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So they really can't afford to miss out on the technology, math, science, communication, problem solving. Those kids who are going to university, who would hire an engineer or an architect who had never actually built anything?
No doubt.
They need those opportunities for authentic learning. So rather than pursuing a pathway sort of approach to career technical education, we really wanted something that was more integrated into core so that every single student had those opportunities. And kids that get really into it have that chance to get really into it. But every kid would have those opportunities in career technical education.
It took me probably, I don't know, listening to Chris Brown several times in the interview that I did with him before I could really wrap my head around a makerspace. And I'm just like, wait, what is it? And then I kept thinking, what is this? And it's just, well, it's amazing, first of all. And it's something, looking back on it now, it seems like you guys are ahead of your time a little bit.
Well, I don't know that we're ahead of our time in terms of a makerspace in itself. I mean, I've visited, Artisan Asylum in Boston. I've been to so many makerspaces across the U.S. So it's definitely something that has become more common.
It's progressive.
It is progressive. And what's progressive about our approach, and I don't think there's another example of this anywhere in the U.S. that I know of, is that we are a school district community industry partnership.
Yeah.
We're actually an LLC. We had to become an LLC. The district did in order to do this. We're partnered with community. So that means that our students can come into that makerspace as part of their physics class. Students can build a catapult. One of the physics teacher, he's awesome. He has kids build a catapult in his carpeted classroom now. He'll be able to bring kids over to do a catapult or something even more amazing there. Kids who are excited about that can be there on a Wednesday night or all day Saturday or every day in July. And the nice thing is that they're rubbing elbows with people who are artisans, who are technicians, who are skilled craftspeople. So they have that opportunity for shared problem solving and mentorship.
Awesome.
It also allows, it will be fiscally sustainable because of those community memberships. The other thing that was different from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and today, the cost of purchasing and maintaining equipment for an industry appropriate, even wood shop, metal shop, any of those areas, much, much higher. School districts, we can't afford to purchase and maintain that kind of equipment.
And this makerspace, I mean, sky's the limit.
Yes.
I mean, it's literally, it's not just, restricted to wood shop, metal shop, design, architecture. I mean, if someone wanted to go in there and say, I want to teach kids about getting a mortgage and how to function.
Absolutely.
I mean,
we have a
that.
lab for that. You can do that. Yeah.
That's just what's crazy to me. And then I can go and buy a membership here, like a gym membership, and just learn something new.
It's like a library of tools and equipment.
I love it.
Whether it's someone who's a novice, who's never done anything in a wood shop, or someone who has a home business or shop in their garage, but they don't have all of the coolest, latest equipment and tools. and they want to go collaborate with other craftspeople.
It's amazing.
I think it's really cool for industry. Right now we see that there are industries in Southern Oregon that need skilled employees, and they're not available a lot of the time. Someone who owns a business and needs someone who can swing a hammer, needs someone who can use that tech equipment, could offer a weekend seminar in how to build something. And that's a way to introduce that business owner to people in the community who may be interested in that.
Right.
Or kids who ultimately want to pursue that as a career.
Yeah. I mean, home builders, that's a one in construction. Those laborers are needed right now.
Absolutely. And it's stuff like that, being able to frame a house. And it's also stuff that's more artsy, or gosh, when we were at ADX and I took all of our entire administrative team, once I discovered this makerspace for our annual district team building to Portland, to the makerspace. And while we were there, we built a chandelier out of bike frames. While we were there, there was a surfboard company from Maine. They had 6 or 7, I don't know, like accountants, lawyers, whatever, who had taken a Friday off. So they had a 3-day weekend, and they were building their own surfboards. So
That's so cool.
yeah, it was exciting. I talked to those guys at the time. They said, if you do a makerspace in Southern Oregon, we'll come to Southern Oregon.
No way.
Yeah, so we'll have to get them here.
Absolutely. And then let me know so we can do a story on it.
Absolutely.
How did you pay for this?
Where did I get $4.5 million?
Yeah, where did that happen?
It's a combination of things. So first I want to say the Morris Family Foundation, who said, think big. And they had no idea how big I was going to think, but they have given us a significant amount of money, well over $1 million.
Thank you, Morris Family Foundation.
Yes, they're awesome. We all primarily grant money.
Okay.
So we have private grants, state grants like Measure 98. The school district, we purchased the property, which is an asset for the district, but it's grant money, and our hope is that it's purchased through private and public grants, and it will be sustained via community.
Are you, this is how many years are we talking this project?
Okay. Well, as I said, I'm a meddler.
Yes.
I find something I'm interested in. I was interested in this. I've spent a lot of time working on this project. I think it'll be 4 years. We were just talking about this the other day.
Wow.
I really thought from the time that I walked into ADX and wanted to do something like that, I thought it would be done, within a year. I have an idea.
Course.
Let's make it happen.
Of course. And it's up and running.
It's up and running.
Okay. And memberships, people can still get a membership to
People
this place.
can absolutely get a membership.
Okay. Where should they go if they want information on what it is and...
Well, you can walk right into CraterWorks or CraterWorks.org.
Okay. Do you think with CraterWorks that, we're kind of discussing these jobs out there, especially those vocational jobs that, it's not a traditional 4-year university. Maybe it's a 2-year degree that you go and then you can get right into the workforce. When I went to college, it was like, if you don't go to college, you're a loser.
Yeah, and I think that's changed a lot, and
Thank
for good
goodness.
reason.
Yeah.
For good reason. We need people who can do things.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me, those disruptors, the folks who are really changing the landscape of the U.S. in terms of commerce or technology. They tend to have kind of, scattered college backgrounds, if there's a college background. And I think that has really changed in the U.S. I do think continuing education of some kind is really important. And for a lot of kids, that may be a university degree. But it's not necessarily the be-all and end-all. My own son dropped out of college with maybe less than a year to go, and he, interestingly, is on the East Coast now. He has a really thriving business there. So
And he's 31.
He's 31.
You do not look old enough to have a 31-year-old.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's the truth. It's a true
Shout
story.
out to my hairstylist who keeps those gray roots covered.
Honey, high five on that. I'm going in this week. It's like, it's the best thing when you leave the salon. You just feel like a rock star.
Absolutely. Yeah, mine's
Yes.
actually getting done tomorrow, so maybe there are roots during this. But
No,
yeah.
thank you, all of those wonderful people out there that keep our hair colored and cover those grays. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. So, I mean, you yourself said you're technically a high school dropout. You know, you got 2 degrees in 5 years. So, I mean, you were on the path to do something bigger. But it just seems like we used to have this idea that you have to go to college after high school and then you have to get a job right after that. And it's just not, it doesn't work for everybody.
It doesn't work for everyone, and I'm not sure it's what we need in our community, in our state. I mean, for the first time in the history of the U.S., the return on investment for a college education is not there.
Yeah.
Kids are graduating from college with debts that are bigger than our mortgages.
It's scary.
It is very scary. So for some kids, while it may be that college really is the path that they want, because certainly if you're going to be an engineer or an architect or a teacher, you need that degree. But those kids really need a learn and earn model. They need to have marketable skills leaving high school so that they can earn that college degree without incurring massive debt.
I mean, tens and thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's just like it's almost, you can get angry over it. What's the point?
Yeah,
you go to school
absolutely.
for 4 years for what? Now I'm going to be paying student loans for 10, 20 years, the rest of my life.
And again, it may be the path for a lot of kids. And I think,
Right.
again, depending on the career, it's really necessary. But how do we get them there without that kind of debt?
I know.
And how do we make sure that they have the skills that they need to be successful once they have their degree and on their way to getting that degree?
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. And you hear horror stories about these students who leave college and they're just faced with all of this debt. I don't know. It's like you can't get to the surface. You're just drowning.
Yeah, I agree.
I was super lucky. I got scholarships and the school I went to was affordable and my parents were in a good position and I didn't have any student debt when I graduated.
Right,
and
right.
It's amazing. I look back, I see all my young reporters who come in and they're just hit with all of this debt and it's heartbreaking.
And they're making $25,000 a year,
If that.
$30,000 a year.
If that. Right.
Right.
Do you feel like the university, the higher education system, should it be free?
Well, should it be free? That's a really complicated question.
Yeah.
I think it should be much more accessible.
Right.
And I think, I met the president of Southern Oregon University. Last year we had a long conversation and she was really progressive around thinking for SOU. And that is to not just be the place where you go when you're 19 years old or 18 years old to get a 4-year degree, but to provide those just-in-time kind of continuing education and certifications that people need when they're adults, or maybe someone just needs this piece but not the entire degree. I think there's some options that way, and I do think that if not free, higher education needs to be much more affordable.
Yeah, much more accessible. I think that's a better way to put it. It needs to be more accessible. And I also think we shouldn't be putting so much weight in the school that you go to.
Right.
I mean, it just, at the end of the day, it doesn't really have a lot to do with your ability and how capable you are of doing the job.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Just because we could go off on that all day long. I'm going to wrap up and get to my final 3, but I do have a teacher question for you.
Okay.
You know, when you're a teacher, it's like, you're doing something that you just hate, absolutely hate, like in chemistry, the equations and all that, and you just think, when am I ever going to use this in the real world? Did you ever? That's a teacher question for you. Are there things that teachers teach now that students are never going to need in the real world?
Yes, all the time.
All
and
the
I think
time.
that is one thing we need to get better at.
Okay.
One of my, can be a particular content area that you're teaching, or it can be a philosophy. One of the things I heard, and I still hear every year, is you don't get to turn things in late in the real world. And that's simply not true. There is almost never a circumstance in the real world where you can't turn something in late, including your taxes. So
So true. That's awesome.
what you can't do is not not complete
Yes.
that work. And I think that a lot of times saying I don't take late work is a way for the kid to say, well, it doesn't take late work. I guess I don't have to do it.
And give up.
That's not true in the real world.
Okay, you heard it here first, everybody. Teachers, stop saying that. No, just kidding. Okay, Samantha Steele, final 3.
Okay.
Best advice you've ever been given.
Oh my gosh, this was hard. I was thinking through a lot of it. I've been thinking about my dad lately. He died on 9/11, actually the year before the 9/11. He was someone that I aspired to be like, an incredibly hard worker. I grew up with a dad who hated Sundays because he seriously couldn't even sit through one football game. He was a tireless worker, and I so much valued that work ethic. Near the end of his life, I was sitting out on the deck at the ranch with him, and we were talking, and I'm sharing with him some of the things that were going on with me in terms of my work, hoping to impress him with my work ethic. And he looked at me and said, none of that means a gosh darn, he didn't say gosh darn thing. And I was kind of taken aback. And he said, that's what I've learned. He said, this sitting here and talking with you, that's what becomes meaningful. And
I just got the goosebumps.
Yeah, I've thought about that. It's still, the work I do still has tremendous meaning for me, but I have to think about it in terms of the kind of meaning that it can have for others as well.
So then he was essentially saying this moment with you on this porch.
It's about relationships.
That's what matters.
Absolutely.
Oh, what was your dad's name?
Henry.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
that's a really good piece of advice.
A moment I'll never forget.
Yeah, for sure. And it sounds like you're living your life that way.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
If you ever left this place, Southern Oregon, what would you miss the most? What would bring you back here?
I can't imagine leaving Southern Oregon. It only takes someone moving away to find out how good we have it here. My son, as I mentioned, has a business on the East Coast. Prior to that, he lived in Portland. He says this over and over again. I am 100 yards from some of the world-class mountain biking. In my house, 100 yards from world-class mountain biking. I can trail run right from my house. In summers, if I want to take the paddleboard out on Immigrant Lake, at dawn before work, it's a 12-minute drive for me. We have mountains, lakes, outdoor recreation is right here. You can drive to Mount Ashland in 40 minutes, and if the snow isn't the way you like it, drive home. You haven't lost a half a day.
Right.
So I think that is something that I can't think of another place in the world that has those sorts of resources available.
Yeah, I think about that all the time. Are there things that I wish were here? Sure. But when I look at what we have, it's incredible to me.
It is incredible. Everyone says if only we had the ocean a little closer, then none of us could afford to live here. So we need to have that mountain range in our way.
So true. And enjoy the drive.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
fine. You're fine.
Exactly.
Okay. Final meal, final drink.
I am torn between making my own final meal or having Ken Forkish prepare it. I'm going to say I'm in retirement. What I will do is cook. I love food. I love to cook.
Yay!
But my final meal is going to be pizza.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, that truly is my favorite, and it's all about the crust. Wood-fired oven. Ken Forkish at Ken's Artisan. With a great glass of Italian red wine. That is my final meal.
Speaking my language, what would be on your pizza?
Oh, something really simple.
Like a margarita?
Yeah.
Okay.
He makes one that has a little bit of onion and spicy sausage and, very, very little sauce and cheese.
So you like to cook? Obviously,
do.
my final 3 is never my final 3. There's always like 8 bazillion other questions. What do you like to cook? What's your favorite thing to cook?
The only food that I absolutely will not eat or prepare are beets. I don't know why. There's almost nothing else in the world that I wouldn't do.
Why beets? Poor beets.
I don't know. Beets.
Do they taste like dirt?
But not in a good mushroomy way.
I love beets.
Yeah, no. So I like to cook when I retire. What I imagine, I used to say owning a restaurant, but I really don't want that. That seems hard. I think what I want to do is, kind of have a supper club where people have to come in
Brilliant.
and eat whatever it is I prepare.
Brilliant.
No menu, no sauce on the side. It's whatever I prepare.
This is on the table. You're going to eat it now. And there's going to be a commercial kitchen at CraterWorks.
There is.
Was that your idea?
Well, I don't know that it was my idea. It was a key part of that because that does differentiate it, I think, from a typical makerspace to have that commercial kitchen.
Anyone who knows me well knows I love to cook also. I love to be in the kitchen.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Love it.
We need to get together and do this.
Love it. Not bake. I'm not a baker. I'm a cook. Like I love to cook and I love feeding people. Have you seen the movie Chef?
Of course.
Sorry, super tangent. I'm obsessed with a show on Netflix recently that just came out. It's called The Chef Show. So it's the actor, Jon Favreau, who played Chef.
Right.
And the chef who trained him for that movie. And they're cooking all the stuff that they made in the movie.
Oh, so like at the closing credits of Chef when he's explaining
Doing the grilled cheese.
Yeah.
So they'd make the grilled cheese and he shows why it was so intense. Do you remember the pasta that he fed to Scarlett Johansson?
Absolutely.
I made that last night because I got so inspired. I had to cook it.
Wow. Wow.
So you need to check out, it's called The Chef Show and it's on Netflix.
Okay, you've got to check out Blood, Bones, and Butter. It's
Okay.
the best memoir I've ever read by a chef. It's incredible. It's literature. It's cooking.
Done.
It's incredible. So
Say it again.
I think it's Blood, Bones, and Butter or
Okay.
Bones, Blood, and Butter.
Okay, and
It
then-
ends with butter and the other two are...
Butter, you had me at butter. I can definitely tackle that. And sorry, everyone. One more thing. Chef's Table on
Yes.
Netflix. Have you seen that?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, it's incredible. There's something about cooking and kitchens and people and community
Yes.
and food.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we could have a part 2 of this podcast.
We should with a bottle of wine and we can just talk about food.
I'm in, Samantha Steele. I am in. You are fun. Smarty pants.
Thank you.
Overachiever.
This was great.
Yeah, super fun. If you're listening to this podcast on iTunes and you like it, please subscribe, rate, and review. It helps other people find us. We are also on Google Play and Stitcher. Check out the video portion of this podcast at ktvl.com. Just click on features and then off script. One more time, Samantha Steele, the superintendent over at Central Point School District. I would say happy summer, but you got to go to work.
I've got to go back to work.
Okay, thanks for being here.
Thank you.